A 50-year-old widow became pregnant by a young neighbor and faces the fury and relentless judgment of her children. Unable to bear the rejection, she makes a sad decision and takes her own life in the cold dimness of a silent waiting room. Helena nervously drummed her fingers on the bag in her lap. The hospital environment, with its antiseptic smell and white lighting, felt suffocating. She had never liked doctors, let alone unexpected visits to the office. But after weeks of dizzy and unexplained nausea, she reluctantly decided to investigate what her body was trying to tell her. "Helena Arrow?" called the firm voice of the receptionist. Helena took a deep breath, loosening the knot that had formed in her stomach, and walked toward the consultation room. Inside, the doctor was already waiting for her, flipping through the newly printed tests. When he looked up, his expression was serious, as if weighing every word he was about to say. "Don't forget to like and don't miss any details of this thrilling story." "So, doctor, what's the diagnosis?" She tried to smile, but her face betrayed her nervousness. The doctor sighed, hesitating for a brief moment. "Helena, I need you to breathe deeply and listen to me calmly. The tests indicate that you are pregnant." Helena's world stopped. She felt the blood drain from her face as the word pregnant echoed in her mind repeatedly like thunder. "Pregnant," she repeated in an incredulous whisper, trying to absorb what seemed like a distant reality. "This is impossible. I'm 50 years old. Doctor, my children are adults. I couldn't." "I understand this is unexpected news, Helena. Pregnancies at this age are rare, but not impossible, and you are healthy, which increases your chances of a safe pregnancy." Despite all the challenges, she could barely hear the doctor. A whirlwind of emotions surged through her. Shock, fear, and even a trace of joy that she quickly suppressed. "How will I explain this to my children?" she thought out loud, feeling a knot forming in her throat. She closed her eyes, breathing deeply. She thought of Leonardo, the young neighbor with the warm smile who had entered her life so unexpectedly. Leonardo, with his easy laughter and conversations that lasted for hours without them noticing. She never imagined that their relationship, which started as a friendship, would lead her to such a monumental turning point. As she left the consultation room, Helena walked in a daze. The doctor's words continued to echo in her mind, a reality that crushed her with a weight she barely knew how to carry. Helena arrived home with her thoughts jumbled, her mind a whirlwind of unanswered questions. Upon opening the door, she let her bag fall onto a nearby chair and sank into the sofa, feeling the weight of an unexpected fatigue. The revelation still pulsed in her head like a dream that insisted on not disappearing. At dawn, she closed her eyes and took a deep breath, but the image of the consultation room, the doctor's words, and the positive test were still there, too vivid to ignore. "How will I tell him?" she whispered to herself, her voice almost a plea for help to the silence of the house. Leonardo. Just saying his name made her heart race. She remembered every smile he had given her, every conversation in the garden at dusk where secrets were revealed under the golden light of twilight. But nothing in their casual conversations had prepared them for something so definitive. After minutes of indecision, Helena picked up the phone and, before her courage abandoned her, dialed Leonardo's number. He answered on the third ring, his usual light and carefree voice greeting her. "Helena, what a nice surprise. Is everything okay?" The familiarity in his voice brought a spark of comfort, albeit fragile. "Leo, I need to talk to you. It's urgent. Can we meet today?" Her voice sounded grave, and Leonardo picked up on the seriousness she was trying to disguise. Sure. Do you want me to come over? Or let's meet at the cafe on the corner. I need a neutral place." She tried to smile, but her nervousness wouldn't allow it. After hanging up, she took a deep breath, mentally preparing for what was to come. She knew that from this moment on, nothing would be the same. Minutes later, already seated at a table away from the cafe, Helena watched the street and the movement around her, trying to find the words for what she needed to say. Leonardo entered smiling when he saw her, but as he approached, he noticed the serious expression on her face and frowned, concerned. "Helena, is something wrong?" He sat down across from her, holding her hand on the table. She looked down, feeling a tremor in her hands. In a voice almost as if she wanted to prevent the world around them from hearing, she said, "Leo, I'm pregnant." His face changed, his eyes widened, and he let go of her hand for a second, too surprised to speak. The news fell like a stone between them, stealing the words that always seemed to flow so naturally. "Pregnant?" he repeated, still trying to absorb the information. "Helena, are you sure?" She nodded slowly, feeling a mix of shame and vulnerability that she rarely experienced. "Yes, Leo, I took the test today. I'm pregnant." Leonardo took a deep breath, bringing his hands to his head, his thoughts seeming to flow as chaotically as hers. I don't know what to say. I never imagined something like this could happen." For a moment, the silence between them was filled with lost and uncertain glances, as if they were both standing before an abyss they didn't know how to cross. Helena watched Leonardo's face, trying to decipher each nuance of his expression. He seemed lost, almost as stunned as she had felt just hours before. His eyes wandered from one point to another on the table as he processed the news. Helena, in a moment of self-protection, began to speak, trying to fill the void that the silence had left between them. "Leo, I didn't plan for this. I didn't even know it was still possible for me. But it happened, and now I don't know what to do." Her voice was heavy with a vulnerability she rarely showed, especially to someone so much younger. She held the coffee cup between her hands, seeking comfort in the warmth of the object. Leonardo finally lifted his gaze, and his eyes met hers. There was fear there, but also something more, something Helena couldn't define right away. "Helena, I'm not saying this is easy or that I understand everything you're feeling." He hesitated, as if he were choosing his words carefully. "But I'm here. I'm not going to run away." Helena felt a mix of relief and pain upon hearing those words. She knew Leonardo was sincere, but at the same time, she understood the weight that this decision placed on him. 20 years between them, distinct realities, dreams that until now had not included the idea of having a child together. "Leo, you don't have to decide anything right now," she said, squeezing his hand lightly. "I want you to know that this is my choice too. If you don't feel ready, I understand. I'll go through this alone if necessary." "No, Helena, I don't want you to do this alone," he replied, squeezing her hand back in a gesture of conviction that surprised her. "I'm not going to lie. I'm scared, yes. I never imagined myself as a father, especially not now, all of a sudden. But I also don't want you to go through this without me. I just need some time to understand everything." She smiled, a contained and tense smile, but sincere. "That's okay. I need time too. I think both of us are entering a new and scary territory." Helena took a long breath, as if that small confession had lifted a huge weight off her shoulders. They sat in silence, exchanging glances and hand squeezes, as if, in that silent touch, a tacit agreement was made. Deep down, Helena knew that the promises made that night were just the beginning of a long journey full of obstacles they couldn't even imagine yet. The days that followed the conversation at the cafe were like an emotional roller coaster for Helena. She swung between moments of serenity and peaks of anxiety, especially when thinking about her children's reactions. Although she was a strong and determined woman, The weight of imagining the impact of this news on their lives left her restless. No matter how much she tried to prepare, she knew it would be a shock. Finally, she decided to invite them for dinner at her house. She prepared everything with care, trying to keep her mind occupied with the trivial tasks of the kitchen. The aroma of the roast filled the air, but even that familiar smell couldn't calm her. How will they react? Will they understand me? These thoughts haunted her as she set the table. When her children arrived, Helena tried to disguise her restlessness with a forced smile. They hugged and sat down, and the initial conversation revolved around light topics like work and small updates. But Helena knew she couldn't postpone for much longer. She felt her heart race and her breath catch for a moment. She needed to speak soon. "Kids, I need to talk to you about something very important," she began, her voice a bit shaky but firm. Her children stopped eating and looked at her, visibly intrigued by the seriousness in their mother's tone. "What happened?" Mom asked the oldest, already worried. She took a deep breath. "I'm pregnant." The silence that followed was thick, almost palpable. They exchanged glances, incredulity etched on their faces. Helena could see the shock take over them. But before she could say anything else, her oldest son exploded. "Is this some kind of joke? Mom? Pregnant? How is that possible?" She kept her gaze steady, trying to convey the certainty she felt inside, even though her voice was marked by vulnerability. "I know it sounds impossible, but it's true. I went to the doctor. It's real and it happened." Her daughter, younger and visibly emotional, whispered, "And the father? Who is the father?" Helena hesitated for a moment, but she knew she had to be honest. "It's Leonardo, my neighbor. I know you might find it strange. He's younger, and this is an unusual situation for everyone, but he supports me. We're going through this together." The oldest son got up from the table, pacing back and forth with visible frustration. "Mom, do you have any idea what this means? What people will say? This doesn't make sense." "I know, dear," Helena said calmly. "I know this news is hard to accept, but it's my life, and I want you to know that this child is welcome, even with all the challenges." The atmosphere at dinner had changed. A heavy silence hung between them, interrupted only by the sound of the silverware as Helena's children put it back on their plates, barely touching the food. She knew that at that moment, there was more to say, but she chose to give them space. After a few minutes, her daughter, looking down, broke the silence with a soft voice, as if she were still trying to process everything. "Mom, I just don't understand why now. How did it get to this point?" Her eyes were filled with a mix of confusion and pain. Helena felt her heart tighten but knew she needed to explain. "I know this is a shock for you," she said, trying to maintain her calm. "But Leonardo and we grew close in a way I didn't expect. He was a pleasant surprise in my life, someone who brought a bit of joy and lightness when I didn't even know I needed it. I never planned for something like this to happen, but what can I do? It happened." Her oldest son, still with his fists clenched on the table, interrupted. "But Mom, have you thought about what this will mean for you, for your health, and for him? He's too young. Do you really think he will commit to this situation for the rest of his life?" Helena took a deep breath, feeling the intensity of the questioning. "I've thought about all of this, dear. I know the situation is complicated, and I know the risks, but I feel that this child is a chance for a new phase, for something I didn't even know I wanted, but now I can't imagine setting aside." Her daughter looked at her with tears in her eyes. "But what about us? It feels like you're starting another life, Mom, a life we don't know." Helena leaned forward, holding her daughter's hand tenderly. "You will always be my children, my family. This child won't change that. It will only increase our love. I need you to try to understand, even if it's hard right now. The oldest son, taking a deep breath to control his frustration, abruptly stood up. I can't understand, Mom. I just need some time. This is too much for me. He grabbed his coat and left through the door, leaving Helena and her daughter in a painful silence. Helena felt a wave of sadness, but at the same time, a quiet determination. She looked at her daughter, who remained there, still trying to process but not leaving her side. I'll be here, Mom, her daughter whispered, gripping Helena's hand tightly. I don't completely understand, but I love you, and if you think this is your chance, I'll try to accept it. Helena hugged her, a relief mixed with sadness. She knew the road would be long and that there would still be many obstacles ahead, but that small gesture of support gave her strength to move forward. The following days were filled with tension and expectation. Helena knew that her oldest son needed time to digest the situation, but his absence hurt her deeply. She tried to occupy herself with daily activities, but with every free moment, her thoughts returned to the disastrous dinner and the harsh words echoing in her mind. It was on a rainy afternoon that, to her surprise, she received a message from Leonardo. He wanted to see her. She hesitated for a moment before responding, fearing that her son's absence and doubts would shake him, but she finally accepted the invitation. They met again at the corner cafe where it all began. Leonardo arrived a little early, and Helena noticed that he was more serious than usual, his eyes revealing a whirlwind of emotions. As she approached, he stood up and greeted her with a soft kiss on the forehead, but the tension was palpable. They sat facing each other, silent for a few seconds, until Leonardo finally spoke. Helena, I've been thinking a lot about all of this, about what it means for me, for you, for the child. He seemed to choose each word carefully, as if fearing that any slip could make everything they were building collapse. Helena nodded, encouraging him to continue. Leo, you can say what you feel. You don't need to measure your words with me. He took a deep breath, searching for courage. I'm scared, Helena. Really. I never thought about being a father, especially now in such an unexpected way. He paused, looking at her with a vulnerability that touched her deeply. But I also don't want to abandon you. I really love you, and that makes me want to face everything by your side, even with the fear. Helena felt her heart race, a mix of relief and emotion. She held his hand on the table, trying to convey security. I know, Leo. I'm scared too, and I understand that this is immense for you. But the fact that you're here telling me this gives me strength. Leonardo squeezed her hand, and their eyes met in a look that seemed to transcend the understanding of words. He smiled, a shy smile, but full of hope. So shall we do this together? Helena couldn't help the tears but smiled back, feeling that somehow she had found the support she needed. Yes, let's do this together. In the following weeks, Helena and Leonardo began to build a routine around the new reality awaiting them. They decided they needed to prepare for the baby, so they organized small changes in both apartments, Helena's and Leonardo's, so that both could be present and engaged in what was to come. Even with the excitement and shared plans, Helena couldn't ignore the absence of her oldest son, whose reactions still hurt her deeply. One day, while she was rearranging the nursery that would be for the baby, she heard the sound of the doorbell. Her heart leapt. She opened the door and found her son standing there with a serious expression, his shoulders slightly slumped as if carrying an invisible weight. "Hi, Mom," he said, his voice low, almost a whisper. Helena took a step aside, inviting him in. She felt a wave of relief but tried to contain her expectations, fearing that he might still be full of criticism and doubts. As soon as he entered, he noticed the newly arranged environment, and upon seeing the nursery, frowned. "You're really going through with this, aren't you?" He crossed his arms, but there was something different in his tone, a resignation mixed with genuine concern. Helena nodded, taking a deep breath. Yes, I understand that you're scared and that this is unexpected, but I really want to go through with this pregnancy. I think this child has a purpose in my life, even if everything seems strange right now. He looked at the floor for a few seconds and then raised his gaze, meeting his mother's eyes with a vulnerability she hadn't expected. I just worry about you, Mom. You've always been our pillar. You've always been there for us, and now it seems like you're starting something new, something I don't understand. Helena felt a tightness in her heart, but also a pang of hope. She moved closer to him, gently holding his hand. I know, my son, and I know it's hard to accept, but I need you to know that this new beginning doesn't mean I have stopped loving you and your sister or that I am pulling away. You will always be my children. You will always be my family. I am just trying to allow myself to live a new phase. He nodded, still not smiling, but something in his expression softened. I'm not going to pretend that I fully understand, Mom, but I want to be by your side. I won't promise that it will be easy, but I will try. Helena hugged him tightly, letting the tears fall freely. She felt filled with a sense of relief and gratitude. She knew he would still have doubts and questions, but that gesture of acceptance, even if partial, was all she needed to feel that her decision was finally starting to be understood. Thank you, my son, she murmured, stroking his hair as she used to when he was little. That means the world to me. After reconciling with her son, Helena felt renewed. Gradually, she realized that the barriers separating her from her family were being torn down, and this made her more secure to face the challenges that pregnancy might bring. However, there was still an important battle remaining. Facing the judgment of her closest friends, those who had known her for decades and who had somehow become part of her support network. One afternoon, Helena decided it was time to be honest with her longtime friend, Lucia. They had known each other since youth, sharing so many phases of life that Helena knew Lucia deserved to hear the truth directly from her, without the rumors that must have already been circulating. When they arrived at the cafe they used to frequent, Lucia immediately noticed Helena's serious expression and tried to lighten the mood. Girl, you look mysterious today. What's up? Did you get a new secret job? Are you going to leave me to live in another city? Helena smiled but soon looked away. Lucia, actually I need to tell you something. It's important. Lucia raised her eyebrows, intrigued, but the smile still lingered on her face. Just spill it. Don't keep me in suspense. Helena took a deep breath, trying to find the right words, but ended up opting for direct honesty. Lucia, I'm pregnant. Lucia's smile disappeared in an instant. She froze, her eyes wide and unblinking as if waiting for Helena to deny what she had just said. Pregnant? Helena, this is a joke, right? You're 50 years old. Helena replied, trying to maintain calm. I know it's unexpected, Lucia. It was for me too, but I am sure of my decision. This baby is a blessing, something life has placed in my path. I feel that it's the right thing. Lucia closed her eyes for a moment, clearly processing the news. When she finally looked back at Helena, her expression of disbelief had transformed into something sharper, almost a silent judgment. And the father? Who is he? It's Leonardo, Helena replied firmly. He is younger, yes, but has been supporting me in everything. We're in this together. Lucia shook her head, her eyes full of a mix of disapproval and concern. Helena, this is insane. Do you realize what this will do to your life? To your reputation? What will people say? Don't you think you're past the age of raising a child? Helena felt a tightness in her chest, but she didn't back down. She knew that this moment would be difficult and that she would need all her strength to face her friend's disapproval. Lucia, I know it's hard to understand. I know it seems crazy, but this is what I want. I have finally found someone who brings me joy and love. And yes, I want to be a mother again, even with the challenges. Lucia crossed her arms, her expression still closed. I just hope you know what you're doing, Helena, because this decision will change everything. Helena felt a pang of pain, realizing that Lucia might not be willing to support her, but at the same time, something inside her strengthened. Thank you for your concern, Lucia. I know things will change, and I'm ready for that, Helena replied, her voice firm. The conversation with Lucia left Helena with mixed feelings. She knew that not all friends would understand or support her choice, but still, that distance that had arisen between them hurt her deeply. In the following days, she found herself more reserved, avoiding gatherings and declining invitations to go out. She felt the weight of the decisions she had made, and no matter how much she had Leonardo and her children by her side, the silent judgment from people she considered friends was painful. But one calm morning, while sorting through some old documents, the phone rang. It was a call from a number that Helena knew well. It was Rul, an old family friend she hadn't seen in months. Rul had always been a presence in her life and her late husband's. Someone who, though reserved, had always shown discreet affection for her and her children. Helena, he began, his voice deep and warm at the same time. I heard that you are going through a special moment. He paused, as if choosing his words carefully. I would like to see you to talk, if you're willing. Helena felt a mix of apprehension and comfort. Rul was someone who always brought wise advice without pressure or heavy judgments, and perhaps, after all the silent rejection she had been facing, he would be exactly what she needed. They agreed to meet in a quiet park, where they could walk and talk without interruptions. When she arrived at the park, Helena spotted Rul sitting on a bench under the shade of a large tree. He stood up when he saw her and opened his arms for a warm embrace. For a moment, Helena allowed herself to rest there, in that simple gesture of affection that meant so much to her. Helena, I heard about your pregnancy, he began as they walked through the park. I imagine it was a difficult decision for you. I want you to know that regardless of anything, I am here for you. Helena sighed, relieved by the understanding in Rul's eyes. It was a surprise, Rul, a surprise that changed everything, but in a way, it's something I feel I need to do. It seems crazy to many. I know, Rul smiled, a serene smile that conveyed understanding. Life is full of surprises, Helena, and sometimes those surprises show us what we really want, even if we hadn't planned for it. He paused and looked at her with a genuine expression of affection. You have always been a strong woman. If this is the path you've chosen, then I believe it's because you think it's the right one. Helena felt her eyes welling up, a lump forming in her throat. Rul, it has been difficult. The people I love are reacting in such unexpected ways. Some friends, like Lucia, think I've lost my mind. I feel like suddenly my life has turned into a spectacle for others to judge. He looked at her kindly. Unfortunately, Helena, people tend to judge what they don't understand. But don't let other people's opinions dictate your happiness. If this is a new chance for you, grab it tightly. Life is too short to live according to other people's expectations. They continued walking, sharing stories and memories. Helena felt that, in that meeting, she was regaining some of her strength. Rul's presence was a reminder that there were still people who supported her unconditionally, who were willing to stand by her without questioning her choices. By the end of the afternoon, when it was time to say goodbye, Rul held Helena's hands and said, If you need a helping hand, I will always be here. You are not alone, Helena. And who knows, this new phase might be exactly what you and this child need to start over. That night, after her meeting with Rul, Helena felt a peace she hadn't experienced in a long time. His support, even discreet, made her feel seen and understood in a way that few had shown until then. It was as if, finally, the idea of building a new life alongside Leonardo and that baby was clearer and less burdened by the judgments of others. But still, she knew that more challenges awaited. Early in the morning, Leonardo showed up at her house with a sparkle in his eyes that Helena noticed right away. He was excited, and the smile on his lips contrasted with the worries she carried in her heart. He walked in holding a bouquet of colorful flowers and went straight to the living room, where she was preparing tea. "Surprise!" he exclaimed, extending the flowers to her. "I thought you deserved something beautiful to brighten your day." Helena smiled, feeling the warmth of the gesture. "Thank you, Leo. I really needed a bit of color around here." She took the flowers and began to place them in a vase while he watched her with a loving gaze. "Helena, I wanted to tell you something," he said, his expression growing serious. "I've been thinking about how we can face all of this, especially the looks and opinions of those who don't understand our choice. And I realized that maybe it's time for us to come together even more." Helena looked at him, curious. "What do you mean?" He hesitated for a moment, searching for the right words. "I know our situation is unconventional, to say the least, but for me, it's all clear. I want to be by your side. I want to raise this child with you. I want people to see that we are in this together. I thought maybe we should consider taking the next step." She frowned, somewhat confused, and he continued with a shy smile. "I'm talking about us living together. Helena, I know it's a big step, and maybe people will find it strange, but I think we can face this better if we are more united." Leonardo's proposal surprised her. She had never considered that possibility, especially given the age difference and the complexities her situation already presented. But at the same time, a part of her felt touched by the idea, by the dedication and genuine desire he showed to be by her side. "Leo, this is a big thing," she said, still processing the proposal. "Are you ready for this change? Because from this moment on, we will not just be a couple, but a family that carries the weight of other people's expectations and judgments." He looked her in the eyes, the shine of determination gleaming. "None of that matters to me. What matters is you, it's our baby, and what we are building. I know there will be difficult moments, but if we are together, we can overcome. I want you to know that you can count on me at all times." Helena felt a wave of emotions. Her heart raced, her breath trembled. The desire to accept that gesture and the fear that still tried to hide in some corner of her being. But above all, the feeling that Leonardo was willing to face the future by her side was what mattered most. She took a deep breath, lightly touching his face, and said, "Let's do this, Leo. Let's face it together as a family. I know the road won't be easy, but if we stand side by side, we will find strength where we least expect it." The following weeks brought a significant change in Helena and Leonardo's lives. The decision to live together began to transform their daily lives, both practically and emotionally. They organized a gradual move, slowly taking Leonardo's belongings to Helena's house and began adapting the space to welcome the baby. They felt excited about the new home they were building together, but were also aware of the challenges. One day, while they were in the midst of packing, the doorbell rang. Helena quickly wiped her hands, interrupting her task of folding clothes, and went to the door, feeling a slight nervousness. Upon seeing it was Lucia, the friend who had reacted with such disapproval to her pregnancy, Helena wondered what to expect. Lucia stood there, holding a bouquet of flowers and wearing an expression that mixed hesitation and guilt. "Can I come in?" Lucia asked, and Helena, surprised, nodded, stepping aside to let her in. Lucia looked around, observing the moving boxes and preparations somewhat awkwardly. I heard that you and Leonardo decided to live together, she began, her voice low, and I realized that I may have been too harsh with you the last time we spoke. I think I was judging your situation without really trying to understand. Helena watched her in silence, feeling a mix of caution and compassion. It was hard to forget the harsh words she had heard in that conversation, but seeing her friend there, trying to mend what had been said, touched her. Lucia, I understand that this situation is difficult for everyone, Helena replied, keeping her voice calm. I know it's not easy to accept that someone our age is pregnant, especially by someone younger, but for me, this is a new chance, something I truly believe in. Lucia nodded, looking emotional. Helena, you have always been someone I looked up to, a strong and determined person. When you told me about the pregnancy, I only thought about the difficulties, about what society might say. But now, seeing you here, building this new life with so much courage, I realize that what matters is your happiness. She extended the flowers to Helena, a simple gesture, but loaded with meaning. I want you to know that I am here. I want to support you truly, without judgment. Helena took the flowers, feeling her eyes welling up. The weight of that reconciliation relieved her, as if a cycle of hurt was coming to a close. Thank you, Lucia. That means a lot to me. And yes, this path won't be easy, but now I know I'm in the right place with the right people. Lucia smiled, and the two embraced. In that hug, Helena felt the support she had temporarily lost and realized that, little by little, the circle around her was strengthening again. She looked at Leonardo, who was watching the scene with a discreet smile, and felt that despite the judgments and challenges, the love and support of those closest to her were all she needed to move forward. A few weeks later, Helena had her first important doctor's appointment since deciding to continue the pregnancy. It was a delicate appointment where specific tests would be conducted to assess her and the baby's health, considering the risks involved in a late pregnancy. Leonardo, always by her side, accompanied her to the hospital, holding her hand along the way. When they arrived in the waiting room, Helena's nervousness was evident, and she squeezed Leonardo's hand harder than she intended. He looked at her with a reassuring smile and hugged her lightly. Everything will be fine, Helena, he whispered, stroking her shoulders. I know this is a tough moment, but we're here together. Remember, whatever happens, we'll face it together. She nodded, trying to control her anxiety. While she was ready to face the challenges of pregnancy, she knew that the physical reality was a crucial factor, and any unfavorable news would be a blow. Moments later, the doctor called her in for the appointment. Helena and Leonardo entered the room, where the professional welcomed them with a serene and professional demeanor. After a series of tests, the doctor sat facing them with the results in hand. He smiled before starting, which brought immediate relief to the couple. Helena, Leonardo, the initial tests are all within the expected range. Although the pregnancy is risky considering your age, Helena, the results are positive. There are no indications of complications at this time. Helena let out a deep sigh, feeling a wave of relief wash over her chest. She looked at Leonardo, who squeezed her hand with an emotional smile, realizing that they both shared that moment of silent gratitude. The baby growing in her womb felt more real than ever, a promise of a new life that was approaching. Thank you, doctor, she said almost in a whisper as she fought against tears of relief. That means so much to us. The doctor nodded, maintaining a professional tone, but with a touch of understanding in his voice. I know it can be a challenging path, but so far, everything indicates that the baby is healthy. I will recommend a series of specific care instructions, but with the right support, there is every chance that everything will go well. When they left the consultation room, Helena felt as if the weight of months of uncertainty and doubt had been, in part, lifted. Leonardo hugged her tightly at the hospital exit, and in that moment, they both knew, without needing to say anything, that they were ready to face whatever came next. Each day, each challenge, and each victory, no matter how small, was one more step in building that new family they dreamed of. "Helena," Leonardo said as they walked to the car, "you have been so strong, so brave. I am so proud of you and so happy that we are going through this together." She smiled, touching his face tenderly. "I couldn't do it without you, Leo. I thought that by this point in life, my days of new adventures were over. But by your side, I learned that there is always room for new beginnings." The days following the appointment were ones of calm and anticipation for Helena and Leonardo. Knowing that the baby was healthy brought serenity to the couple, something that had previously seemed impossible amid the uncertainties and judgments they faced. They began to plan more details for the arrival of their child, from the items in the nursery to discussions about how they would like to raise him. Both were involved in every decision, creating an environment of support and love where choices were made from the heart. On a sunny afternoon, Helena and Leonardo decided to host a small gathering at home with some friends and family to share the news. She knew that many were still processing the idea, but she felt stronger and more determined to celebrate the life they were about to build. She decided it was time to show the world, friends and family, that despite others' opinions, the love she and Leonardo shared was genuine and deserved to be celebrated. When the first doorbell rang, Helena felt her heart race. Lucia was one of the first to arrive, bringing with her a carefully wrapped gift in colorful paper and a warm smile. Now free of the reservations she had before, Helena welcomed her with a warm hug, grateful to know she could count on her friend. "I brought something for the baby," Lucia said, handing over the gift with an emotional look. "It's simple, but I thought he might like it." Helena carefully opened the package and found a small handmade wool blanket. The thoughtfulness of the gesture touched Helena deeply, and she held Lucia's hand, squeezing it with gratitude. "Thank you, Lucia. It's beautiful, truly. It means so much to me to have you here," Helena replied, her voice choked with emotion. Little by little, other friends arrived, including Ruel, who approached Helena and Leonardo with a knowing smile. "So, is this where the new adventure begins, huh?" he joked, hugging them both. Helena smiled, grateful to have people in her life who, even without understanding everything, were willing to stand by her side. When everyone was gathered, Leonardo took Helena's hand and, in a subtle gesture, asked for the attendees' attention. He took a deep breath and began to speak, looking at Helena with a tenderness that moved everyone. "I wanted to thank everyone for being here, for being part of our lives and for supporting us. Even though this is an unexpected journey, I know our story is unconventional, but I've never been more certain of a decision than I am now. Helena has taught me what true love is, the kind that knows no barriers, ages, or judgments." Helena felt tears silently streaming down her face as she listened to Leonardo's words. He turned to her and, holding her hand firmly, continued, "Helena, you have changed my life, and now we are about to live the greatest adventure of all." An emotional silence enveloped the room, and some friends, visibly moved, applauded the couple. Helena looked around and realized that even in the face of all the challenges, she had managed to create a circle of love and support that, gathering simple and intimate, became a milestone in both their lives, a declaration of love and commitment in front of those who truly mattered. At the end of the gathering, when friends and family had already said their goodbyes, Helena and Leonardo sat on the sofa, Clara peacefully sleeping in Helena's arms. The soft light of the evening filled the room, and the comfortable silence between them seemed to encapsulate all the peace of that moment. "Helena," Leonardo whispered, touching her hand, "look at what we've built. Even after so many difficulties and so much judgment, we made it here. She looked at him with a tired, tender smile. Yes, Leo, against all odds, we created something beautiful, something true. Clara is our proof that love can overcome any barrier. And so, in that silent room, surrounded by the peace of home and the delicate presence of their daughter, Helena and Leonardo knew they had one. They stayed there, embraced, contemplating the future with full hearts and a shared certainty. They were exactly where they were meant to be. As the weeks went by, Helena and Leonardo adapted to the new rhythm of life that Clara brought them. The nights were still short, and the days filled with care and new discoveries. But the love and complicity between them grew with every little moment they spent together. The house, once silent, was now filled with the sounds of a family rediscovering itself. Each day from smiles to knowing glances and the small challenges of everyday life. Amidst all this, Helena began to realize something that brought her a mix of surprise and gratitude. Her own strength. Clara had made her reclaim a determination she hadn't felt since the early years of her motherhood. Each day with her daughter was a reminder that even when circumstances seemed unlikely, life could surprise her with gifts she had never imagined. On a sunny morning, while rocking Clara on the porch, Helena reflected on the path that had brought her here. It was a journey that no one, not even she, could have predicted, but one that had brought with it a new sense, a second chance to live fully. Leonardo appeared with 2 cups of coffee, handing one to Helena and sitting beside her, watching their daughter sleep in her arms. He smiled as he always did when he saw the two of them together, enchanted by the image of serenity they formed. "Have you thought about how much our life has changed in the last few months?" he asked, a light smile on his lips. Helena chuckled softly. "I think about it every day. It feels like I'm living a new life, as if I've been reborn." Leonardo took a sip of his coffee, looking at the horizon with a contemplative air. "I do too. I never imagined that a simple move, a new friendship, could transform my world so much. Clara is the most unexpected gift, but the most precious one I could have." They sat in silence, enjoying the calm of that moment. It was as if time had slowed down, allowing them to relish the simplicity of being together, of being a family that supported each other unconditionally. Helena felt secure beside Leonardo, as if she had finally found a safe harbor where she could anchor herself without fear of judgment or uncertainty. Later, while Clara slept peacefully, Helena and Leonardo began to discuss dreams and plans for the future. They talked about the trips they would like to take with Clara, the little family traditions they wanted to create, and the values they wished to pass on to her. "I want her to grow up knowing that love, courage, and authenticity are what truly matters," Helena said, her eyes shining with conviction. "I want her to know that her choices don't need to make sense to others as long as they make sense to her." Leonardo watched her with admiration. "She is already growing up with the best example of that, Helena. You faced everything with such courage, even when the world didn't understand. Clara will be proud of you, just as I am proud of you." Helena was moved by his words, feeling the weight of each one. In that moment, she realized that her greatest legacy would not just be raising a daughter, but also showing her that love and courage can build bridges to where dreams become possible. With a smile, Helena leaned in and kissed Leonardo, sealing that moment with a gesture of love and complicity. They knew that the road would still have obstacles, but they also knew they were ready to face them together. And so, under the gentle morning sun, Helena, Leonardo, and Clara formed a unity that transcended difficulties and judgments. They were at last a family, united, whole, and filled with dreams that they could hardly wait to realize.